Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Red Letter, Yellow Letter podcast, a weekly anarchist, voluntarist, agorist variety podcast where we talk about and philosophize the morals and ethics of everyday goings on in the world today, tomorrow, and in the future. I'm your host, Nev, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host and fellow anarchist, Harley. Harley, how are you this morning?
Ready to punch government in the dick like usual?
Yeah, I'd be a little bit more diplomatic. It's not so much punching the government in the dick. It's, here, ladies and gentlemen, here are some very
So you're the classy diplomatic one.
I know.
And I'm the sassy Californian, whatever.
Yeah,
thing.
I'm the pro alternative, and you're the anti this and anti that.
It's about balance.
Yeah.
It's about balance.
Yeah. I'm diplomat Nev, and you're auntie, not anti, but auntie Harley.
I'm the spicy one.
You're the spicy one, yes.
Yeah.
Well, it does pay to have a little bit of spice in a podcast, that's for sure. But yes, so obviously this is the first podcast. This is the first episode of the Red Letter, Yellow Letter podcast. So we're just going to do a little short one where we kind of introduce ourselves and we ask each other how we came to where we came to be today. So I'm going to ask you first, Harley. How did you come to be where you are today? How did you, what was the beginning of your journey towards anarchism?
All right, it's tragic backstory time. So grab your sad popcorn here.
Oh, I've got my coffee.
There we go. That works. All right. So basically, the first anti-government authority distrust, all that actually started really early in life for me for a few different reasons. I grew up in a very strict, unconventional, offshoot. I don't know if fundamentalist is the right word. Maybe, I don't know, but it was very, very strict kind of church, and very, very in control in the household by my Bible thumper biological father, who actually wanted to be a cop or a lawyer, whichever one came first. Okay. So I was raised very much in, especially like Republican ideals, respect the government, love Bush, blah, 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 blah. Right. So yeah, he was always, it's only so much my little 8-year-old mind can understand when he's talking about Bush like he's this big hero. I'm just like, okay, whatever. But anyway, so he ended up getting removed by force from the household because of his abusive behaviors. And funny enough, this is literally the only thing in my life that cops have done that actually worked to my advantage. And it was done because they actually screwed up. They actually misread a restraining order as an eviction notice and removed him from the home. So the one time they did me any good was when they screwed up. Okay. And since then, there is just this, I started to kind of question things because I was seeing who kids, I was raised so heavily in like, respect your father, respect your parents, blindly follow authority, question nothing. And that's really when I started like question, like, is this true? Should I start, I see inconsistencies. I see hypocrisy, not like always in the religion, but with him and what he was using to justify his behaviors. Mm-hmm. So that got me kind of wondering about government as well. And especially that kicked off even more when I was struggling with CPS issues. It was not uncommon for CPS to come over to our house and do various investigations because he would lie about our living situation. He would do things like squeeze my arms to the point where they bruised when he was angry, and then try to claim it was my mother, just stuff like that. So we often had visits from CPS and other government workers at our schools, in our home. And every time I would say, this is what he did, this is how it was done, here's what he's doing, they would completely lie about it in the reports. Mm-hmm. They would, and it just didn't make any sense to me. And after a while, it got to the point where I had to have an official like statement and everything. And so I poured my heart out, not with everything he was doing, because I already started to distrust CPS because of how often they were lying about her living situation. So I just kind of gave some stuff that I knew was going to be alarming enough to make them go, okay, she needs to stay away, but without it potentially getting back to him and punishing me, or if they just didn't believe it, you know? And so I gave my whole report, and we got the report back. We got a copy of the report, and they lied about everything I said, completely twisted all of my claims backwards. When I was saying, like, I don't want to see him again, I'm terrified, this is what he does to humiliate me, this is what he does to hurt me, etc., they twisted and just made it sound as if I saw him as this big hero, and like I couldn't get enough of him. And at that point I was 10 years old, and it just, you know, it confuses. It was like, why? What was the point? Why would you take this child's statement and just twist it around? And so because of that, I had to continue seeing him on weekends, staying with him every weekend.
Yeah.
And I never felt safe. It was horrifying. And as I got older, because I wasn't legally allowed to say, nope, I'm not doing this anymore until I was like 12 or 13, we started coming up with excuses to why I couldn't go. And it was just any excuse in the book we can think of. She has way too much homework. She needs to stay home and focus on that. She doesn't have appropriate church clothes because she outgrew them. So she can't go to church until you provide her some church clothes. And so she's going to stay here, and do her Bible study with me instead. I mean, just anything we could think of. And one weekend in particular, it was going to be it would have been the third weekend of skipping going to his house. And by then I was 11. And I wanted to skip again. I didn't want to see him. And I thought it was absolute bull that I wasn't legally allowed to say no. And my mom was afraid that if we skipped again, he would make a report and potentially lose custody. And we got into this big fight because, she was afraid of that. I was afraid of him hurting me. I was afraid of him interrogating and digging and catching me in a lie, because he hated lying. He hated lying. And that was some of the ways he would hurt me the worst, was if he thought I was lying, it was all over. And so I was terrified of going to his place. And we got into a big fight over it, my mom and I. 2-hour screaming match fight over this. And after a while, when she's stewing in her room and I'm stewing in mine, and it clicked. Who are these people to tell me how to live my life?
Yeah.
These are strangers that routinely, just over and over again, repeatedly showed they have no interest in my well-being. They have no interest in really learning the truth. They have no interest in what the truth actually is. Not even no drive to learn it. They just didn't even care when it was put in their face. They had no desire to apply the truth. So who are these strangers with no care or respect for me and my safety and my choices to dictate what's best for me? Because they have a fancy badge? Because some other higher up with a fancy badge said they did? Yeah, no. And so that really started clicking, wow, this really is just bullshit. And so I actually wrote a letter about, I wish I still had it, to be honest. I wrote a letter about that to my mom, saying all that information. I slipped it under her door and went back in my room, and she was pissed. How dare you say that about government? You need to respect it, But that was the very first real, truly clicking moment. That was wow, these are literally just strangers who don't care. It's about his rights, not my safety. And after that, that's when I really started to research lots of things that I had been questioning for a long time, but wasn't allowed to research. I wasn't allowed to question government authority. I wasn't allowed to look into these things. I was supposed to just blindly follow. I didn't want to blindly follow anymore. So I went down this absolute rabbit hole of every flippin' conspiracy theory, everything that I could find. I didn't believe most of it. There was a lot of, obviously there's a lot of stuff that's okay, do I really think Hillary's a reptilian? No. Is it an entertaining idea? It is. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised at this point if it was true, but it's not like I believe it, But I still wanted to hear other people's testimonies. I wanted to see what made them scared, what made them distrust. I wanted to almost be a listening ear for these people who maybe didn't have one, even though they would never know I was listening. But that was something I didn't have, was a listening ear. And so I wanted to know why. And that kind of fed the need to know why they sided with him instead of protecting me. This is not a man who could have paid them off. He was working at like Eddie Bauer or some shit, you know, it was like retail basic job. It's not like he could have paid them. So what was the motivation? And watching all these, reading all these conspiracies, reading all these books, watching all these shows, it just filled a need to learn and hopefully potentially understand why. And as I got older, I understood it was likely because he was one of them. He wanted to be a cop. He wanted to be a lawyer. He knew how to clean himself up and look real good and professional. He freaking worshiped the state. So he was on their side. I was not. Even though I was just a child, I was still technically the enemy. Mm-hmm. And that just became more and more apparent as I got older. And by the time I was 12 years old, I was already like, nope, don't trust cops. I don't trust them. I'm not picking a side for either politician. I understand lesser of two evils theoretically, but it's not like you can trust either of them. You know, they're all going to lie. They're all going to steal. They're all going to murder. They're all going to do this and that. So I didn't know there was a libertarian party. I didn't know that was a thing. I was probably more minarchist at that point, honestly, because I still held on to like, maybe we need some kind of personal protection, you know, or some kind of justice system, even though I know firsthand it's shit, you know? So I was kind of, I mean, keep in mind, guys, I was 12, you know, I was pretty far along for a 12-year-old, but not quite, you know, understanding. And by the time I was 18, that's when my mom actually wanted me to register to vote, but I didn't feel comfortable choosing a party or anything. So I actually just put conservative because my personal morals, you know, I would not get an abortion personally. I wouldn't smoke marijuana personally, that kind of stuff. I didn't want to put a party down. So I just put that. I didn't know what else to say. And I almost registered as libertarian, but I still didn't want to be part of a party. I didn't feel comfortable being on the side of the government in any way. And I never used my voter card ever. So by the time I was about 20, I was 21 when I first heard of Larkin Rose through my mother, because my mother actually later on went down a similar rabbit hole because she got sick of all the government bullcrap. And then she fell down the Alex Jones rabbit hole and everything. And so it took her longer to do so, but eventually she went down that path. And she's the one who introduced me to Larkin Rose. And Larkin Rose was that image of a normal looking anarchist, because by then there was, you know, I still had that stigma in my mind of Molotov cocktail throwing anarchist punks, smashing windows and crap, but I didn't want to use anarchist because I didn't want to have that stigma. So when I saw him, just this normal looking guy that you wouldn't know any different if you saw him at the grocery store or something, it was like, huh, okay, maybe it's doable then if I can just say I'm an anarchist and not, you know, I don't have to be associated with that stigma as much as I thought I would be. Mm-hmm. And so I guess it was around age 22 that I started saying anarchist and voluntarist as well. Over time, I guess I've leaned a little more towards agorism as a title, mm-hmm. but still under that voluntarist, etc. umbrella.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my tragic backstory.
Mine is mine is not so much tragic as it's not tragic at all. In fact, to be perfectly honest with you, I was just going through life, ticking along. I was you know, I was a project. We're talking about the mid 2000s, mid to late 2000s. But for me, I was just a regular person. You know, I was late. I was in my 20s. Family, house, mortgage, car, the usual kind of gumph, that kind of nondescript average Joe type person. And then you know, I watched YouTube. A lot of fun back then. You could pretty much watch anything. Everything was literally available. Literally everything was available on YouTube back then. There was zero censorship, and I do mean zero. You could find anything you wanted. And then it was then up to you to make an informed choice as to whether you liked it or not, or whether you agreed with it or not, or whether you thought it was a good or a bad idea, and you either moved toward it. It's as simple as that. But I guess for me, the big thing was probably around about 2007 to 2008. YouTube really, really blew up the 2008 presidential campaign, because at that time it was candidates for both sides. So both parties were going through primary process, and you couldn't escape it. You couldn't escape it on the news. You couldn't escape it on YouTube. So I kind of fell into watching it. But the first ones that I watched were the Democrat ones, because in the UK you are propagandized to think that the Democrat Party is the good party and that the Republican Party is the bad party. It's that, Democrats, progressive and liberal and, all of those, nice buzzwords. And then the Republican are just right. It's just right wing. It's not, conservative or fiscally responsible, nothing like that. So I started watching the Democrat one, and they were all exactly the same as each other. With one exception, and that one exception at the time was Dennis Kucinich. Now, don't get me wrong, he was very progressive, but he was very kind of, going towards the Constitution. It's like, look, we can do this, and we can do that, and we can do that with, without tearing up, the founding document. We can do things fair and rationally and reasonably, and we can have our social safety net, and we can do this and that and the other. But the tipping point for me was they were all asked who would they choose to be their running mate, and this guy picked a Republican. He said Ron Paul, and I was like, what? That's just so weird, because everybody was like looking at him weird because they all picked somebody else that was up on the stage with them. So that got me thinking, okay, so I'm interested now. This why would a Democrat pick a Republican? So I went and watched the Republican one, and I saw Ron Paul, who, yes, he was on the Republican ticket, but he was more libertarian. And from that, I looked back and discovered that he'd actually run as the Libertarian candidate back in 1988. And that was what started me the rabbit hole. So I would look at stuff that he'd previously said about reducing the size of the government, and how a big government is inefficient and incompetent and negligent regarding many, many, many facets. He would say, oh, the government could probably do this competently and this and this and this, but these areas, they're either negligent or incompetent, and things like that shouldn't be getting done by a central government. You should roll those things back, and they should be done at a state level. They should be done at a local level, like councils and towns and cities. It shouldn't be some all-powerful government entity controlling those things for hundreds of millions of people. Tens of thousands and thousands of people have a better idea of what they want in their locality than a person 2,000 miles away going, well, we think this is good for you, so we're going to impose this on you. So I kind of thought that was kind of nice, and then that kind of opened up Pandora's box for me as I started looking at other libertarian stuff, and I actually started looking at libertarian festivals and conventions, and that was when I came across the likes of Adam Kokesh and Stefan Molyneux, who back in the mid to late 2000s were very, very purist. I mean, I would put them along the similar lines to Larkin Rose, because obviously I came across them as well. And that kind of put me on the path to libertarianism. So I would say from 2008 until 2012, I was more minarchist, partially down to the fact that I ran for office in 2011 and 2012 in the United Kingdom. And to anybody that isn't sure about just how bad things can get and how weird things are and how just out of left field things are, run for office. Try, if you're a libertarian, or if you're small government, just run for office as an independent against party candidates, and you'll see just how messed up it is. I mean, you really, really will. I mean, I was sat down in a green room waiting to do a radio interview with one of those candidates, and I asked him, because have to put a deposit. You have to pay to be a candidate. You know, before your name is even put on a ballot, you have to pay to become a candidate. And I asked him, you know, would you agree that you think that the amount you have to pay to be a candidate is excessive? And his response to me was, well, you know, it stops the dross from running for office. So that was the caliber of person that runs for public office. They don't want to run against, you know, it's not about the people. They were referring to people that could run for office as dross. You know, you should not ever, if you are a candidate, refer to people who can vote or be a candidate as dross. But that was what happened, and you know, so the election was over. Obviously, I didn't win because I was an independent, and independents very rarely win in the UK. If you're not one of the major parties, then that's it. And once that was over, I decided, because I was already close to it. I was very, very close to it in the last 2 years, but I wanted to give minarchism. It was almost, I want to do this as my last kind of hurrah as an independent person, and I thought, yeah, okay, we'll give one more try. Didn't work, so 2012, that was when I embraced voluntarism wholeheartedly. More so in the UK, because voluntarism in the UK was relatively new, and it was not. I mean, it's not massively different from. It's not massively different from anarchy. Voluntarism in the UK is more about looking for a diplomatic approach, a more voluntaristic approach, being more pro solutions as opposed to just anti everything that government does is wrong. Because to a voluntarist, it's like, well, you know, stating something that doesn't work is kind of obvious. You know, it's a bit like church. You know what? People go to church every single week and they listen to the same thing every single week. It's almost like they need something to be reinforced. It's like, if you know it to be true, why do you need to keep saying it over and over again? Why do you need to keep reinforcing it? If you were, you know, if the sky is blue, you don't see people constantly saying the sky is blue or grass is green. You know, but you know. A lot of anarchists would be like, oh, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, over and over and over again. It's like, yeah, I get that, but it's
right.
kind of so instead of just saying something's bad, something's worse, something's broke, why not say, oh, you know, here's a lovely voluntaristic alternative. You know, here's something simple, here's something that works else, and that was, you know, so that's more the voluntarist approach, is being, you know, more diplomatic about things and being more pro things, while still encapsulating and adhering to, you know, the non-aggression principle and the whole no rulers thing, while still recognizing the fact that, you know, hierarchies and you know, authority is required for, you know, human society to progress and function. But not in the, you know, not in the arbitrary, forced, thrust upon authority, and that kind of that's the way it's been. That's the way it's been for me, and it's more about living it than preaching it. You know, if everybody that was a voluntarist lived it, and they let their friends see it, and if your friends ask questions, it's like answer questions, but not proselytizing to them. Oh, you know, that the last thing I was ever going to do was, you know, say to my friends, oh, well, you're you know, you're a statist and you want this and this and this to happen. You know, it's like the when the left says to the right, oh, you want babies to die in the street. It's like,
right.
no, they don't. They don't at all. You know, and what the best way the best way forward for voluntarists to argue would be, if you're discussing or debating with somebody. I discovered that, you know, a whole new way of discussing it with people is align yourself with the goals of the individual that you're having a question with, and then prior to discussing the solutions to it, you say, look, you know, so okay, so we can both agree we want education for our children to be amazing. We want it to be world class. Where we're going to differ is how we provide that. So if we can both, before we start talking about education, both of us agree that we want education for children to be amazing and excellent and world class, we need to understand that, you know, we're probably going to have different solutions to how we achieve that. You know, we want really, really good transportation. We want really, really good care for our, you know, for the elderly. You know, align yourself with the, I mean, sometimes you might find conversation with someone that you don't necessarily want to align, that doesn't want to align their goals with you. You know, some people might be like, you know, oh, I don't want everybody to be wealthy. I want everybody to be poor. It's like, well, so what's your definition of poor? Do you want everybody to be able to, you know, live comfortably, or do you want everybody to just have to struggle? You know, do you want so there are tweaks here and there, but most people want the same goals for society, and they want the same goals for humanity. You know, we want, you know, we want really, really, really good healthcare. We want excellent education for our kids. We care for our elderly, you know, things like that. We want reliable transportation and stuff like that. So from a voluntarist point of view, I just really liked the idea, and that's why I embraced it, that, you know, it's more about, you know, aligning yourself with everybody else wants, and how we get to it, that's the different part. That's the discussion, that's the debate, and kind of approaching it from a more diplomatic perspective, as opposed to, you're wrong, that's wrong because they're using force to do it. It's like, I don't need to tell a person, if I treat a person as an intelligent human being, I don't need to let them know or make them aware that the solution that they're coming up with is forced. I mean, I will, but in a more diplomatic sense than, you know, than the left does to the right, or the right does to the left, which is, oh, you want people to die, or oh, you want people to suffer. It's like, no, are you stupid? I mean, come on, don't be irretrievably stupid. Nobody wants that. You may come up
dead. Wear your mask, or you want grandma dead.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, you may come up with a solution, and I may come up with a solution, and there may be unintended consequences to both our solutions. It's not intentional. That's why they're called unintended consequences. Every solution to a problem has an unintended consequence. Sometimes those unintended consequences are negative, and sometimes they're really positive. You don't know until you've discussed them and fleshed them out. But you've got to start with aligning yourself with the goals, and that was one of the reasons why I really, really want to embrace voluntarism, because I liked that idea of having rational, reasonable conversations with anybody, no matter where they were on the spectrum, because it's just so much easier. And that's why, you know, a lot of my friends, some of my older friends, no longer talk with people, were on the left. It was easier to talk. It used to be, I mean, in the mid 2000s, it was easier talking to people on the left than it was on the right. Obviously, that swung back the other direction now. And now it's easier to discuss things with people on the right than it is to discuss things.
Not for me. Believe it or not for me. Because here's the thing, I agree with you, like, on all of that, you know, like, you have to find that common, we want this to change, we want to see this happen. I completely agree.
You find a common ground.
Yeah, exactly. And so I actually have a lot of stereotypical millennial, socialist leaning, etc. friends in my life. And I've definitely lost a great deal of friends who, with quotes, friends who aligned in that regard, because they see, oh, she's anarchist, that must mean she believes in this and that and this and that, and they just bail. A lot of my right-winger friends have done that. They've just dropped me as soon as I started saying anarchist, as soon as I started saying I want rights for this, whatever, they just bailed. Now, a lot of the left-leaning people in my life know by now, because they've known me long enough, they understand that we do have a lot of that common ground. I want to see kids with better education, away from, you know, Betsy DeVos and all that crap. I want to see gay and trans people, etc., all treated with the same respect, you know, as everyone else. And you know, I want police brutality to stop, all that kind of stuff. You know, there's a lot of common ground. And they do recognize that my approach is just simply different than theirs, but my heart is in the right place.
Yeah.
So because they understand that, and because they understand, they know a lot of my beliefs today and how I am the way I am is because of personal trauma. They're more gentle to hearing me out. They go, okay, so what happened to you that brought you to this point? And I've had some people say to me, like, I can't believe it's taken me this long to wake up to what you've been saying in this regard and on this and on that. And they're like, I've gotten a lot of comments on how I was saying this stuff at such a young age. And I'm like, well, honestly, it's just because I've been through the ringer over and over and over again. Most people have not bounced back and forth through the same CPS.
Excuse me. Sneezy.
No, you're good. Many people have not bounced back and forth through the exact, a lot of them have. I know it's not like I'm the only one who's gone through this stuff, but I've gone back and forth through homeschool, charter school, public school over and over again, and had just the absolute worst from, government dictated education. I've had multiple horror experiences with CPS and the judicial system over and over. In fact, when I was 17, I skipped my high school graduation because my biological father was trying to testify against us moving out of California. So I skipped my graduation ceremony so I could go there and testify against him. That was the first time I had seen him physically in 5 years. And I was like, look, this is my history. This is what happened with him. This is what he's been doing to us. And just in the past 5 years, how he continues to hurt us and hold us back, etc. And I laid it all on the line. And guess what they did? Lied about every damn thing I said. We got back the report, and it was full of, she misses him so much, and she regrets ever legally cutting ties with him and all this stuff. I'm just like, wow. Once again, I can't trust anybody, huh? I couldn't trust schools. I couldn't trust principals. I couldn't trust counselors, therapists, doctors. Every single one of these types of people, they all backstabbed me. They all betrayed me. So that's what I have to tell people is, look, I'm the way I am because of just way too much personal experience. And they'll say, yeah, I've had some stuff, but nowhere near as much as you did. And, it's like, they know I'm speaking at least from some experience, and they know I've suffered. I'm not some just, like the cliche, oh, libertarians are all just rich white men who just want to take advantage of everyone with their guns and have no repercussion. Well, obviously that's not my situation, is it? So they see that. They see the standard millennial age, pulled through the ringer, not exactly rich, woman, and they're more likely to hear me out. Mm-hmm. And then because I show that, I listen to their fears, I listen to their stories. Like you said, live by example. I try to give everybody the same respect that I would want from anyone else, no matter how different they are. I homeschool my kids, and I do my best to get into homesteading and everything. I try to live by example. Okay, here's what I want to see happen. I want to see factory farms, less the big, the really large scale ones where they keep all the animals in little cages and they just grow up in horrible conditions. How can I do that? By raising some of my own meat, things like that. I try to live it by example as much as possible. And by living by example, that's how you get people to watch and go, maybe she's not so crazy. Maybe this whole voluntarism, maybe agorism, maybe it's not as bad as we think it is. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's definitely a really, really big thing for me.
Yeah, well, so everybody knows about us now. we've given you a little taste of exactly who we are and how we came to where we are today. So we're going to end today's initial podcast. This is just the first one. It's a short one. What we're going to what we're hoping to do in future with future podcasts is we're just going to do some long form conversations. We're going to pick a few subjects here and there, and then we're just going to, bat over it. Of course, if you have anything to say, or if you have any comments to make, you throw them down in the comments below, or hit us up on Twitter if there's anything would like us to, would like to hear us have a conversation or about. Make it fun, make it useful. Don't pick something that's so much of an outlier that it really has no bearing in a conversation. A couple of anarchists or a couple of voluntarists. I know that Harley is definitely looking to do some fun polls in the future. She's definitely going to want to do something like that. And obviously, we will be pimping merch, as we will have merch. What self-respecting podcaster goes onto YouTube and doesn't do merch? Everybody does merch. So we'll make sure that there are some links for merch down below. It's not going to be like t-shirts and mugs. It's going to be ashtrays and penises with lights in. So, but just follow the links. There's some fun and interesting stuff I think you'll like. But we're going to close this out now and say thanks for watching. Hit that like, hit the subscribe. Make sure you share this, because this is a channel from scratch, so we have no subscribers at the moment. So it'd be really, really nice if we could get up, get those numbers up. Hey, who knows? Maybe if we get above 1,000 subs, do it live. But let's cross that. We'll wait until we cross that bridge before making decisions. Who knows? Anyway, hey, Harley, have you got anything you'd like to add before I close out the podcast?
No, I think you pretty much covered everything.
Excellent.
Again, you're the diplomatic one who covers all the bases, and I just say shit.
Of course, with an English accent like this, with an English with a Hugh Grant voice like this, of course I'm the diplomat.
Of course. Do I look diplomatic? No, I look like an ANCOM. I don't look diplomatic.
The blue-haired SJW. Yes. Okay. No, I'm rocking. I'm the silver fox, rocking the grey sides.
Again, it's about balance.
Yes, exactly. It's about
balance.
That's
what it is.
Yin and yang.
Exactly.
We're both yin and we're both yang. So yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and we will see you guys very, very soon. Ta-ta for now.
Bye, guys.